Okay, we are live. Over to you,
Okay,
Madam Chair.
thank you. Welcome, everyone. The meeting will be live streamed, recorded, and available on the internet by visiting the county's website at www.thecounty.ca. This meeting will be conducted as a virtual electronic meeting in accordance with the county's procedural bylaw. Okay, so now the first item is that the agenda for the Built and Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee meeting of February 5th be confirmation of the agenda. Yeah. Okay, I'm still a bit behind here. February 25th be confirmed. Mover and seconder.
I so moved.
All right, are John and Michael, I think. So all in favor? Okay, so this is the agenda, okay? No additions, Ben, since I've no. Okay. Disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Seeing none, we'll proceed. Minutes of the previous meeting, that the minutes from the Built and Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee meeting held January 8th, 2025 be adopted as presented. Mover and seconder. Thank you, Edwin. And seconder. Thank you, Valerie. Does anybody have any comments about the minutes? Any? No? All right. Then all in favor? Thank you. All right. Announcements, Ben?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to the committee. Only that this is Flashback February. So for the heritage-minded among you, which should be all of you, there is a panoply of events across the county, historical and heritage.
Yes.
It's all available online. So, partake.
Yeah. And noted that it used to be a week in February. The events have now been spread out over the full month of February because we found if there was a storm, it was hard to relocate it.
Yes.
The thing in the same week. So we thought we better take the month of February. And two notable ones from the Historical Society on March 1st. We couldn't get them into the February schedule. There'll be a presentation on cemeteries in the future, looking at what the past and the future. It's part 2 of the presentation that was done last year. And Thomas Harrison, a local author, is going to have his books there. It's a book launch for his book for the Nixon connection to Prince Edward County. And both presentations will be in Macaulay Church. Okay. That's just, they kind of connect with this committee. Thank you. Okay. So Ben, now we have a deputation.
We do have a deputation. Let me just let Deborah Marshall in.
Hi, Deborah.
Hello. Good morning.
Okay, Deborah, would you like me to put your slideshow up?
Am I going up first?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yes, please.
One moment.
Oh,
Okay, so tell me when you want me to start.
Okay. Okay, Deborah. Yes, you can start your presentation, I think. And I think that most people have received some information in our package about okay.
Okay, well, I'm taking a leap of faith that everybody's at least scanned it. Okay, slide number 1. I'm here today as a representative of the Whitechapel Management Board to ask that this committee reconsider its wording of the motion recommended to council on January 14th and unequivocally request action to address council's lack of consideration of the Whitechapel and that a heritage impact assessment be ordered for the Whitechapel property. Council at January 14 meeting referred back to this committee the motion it had submitted regarding, quote, exploring a heritage impact assessment for Whitechapel. It is our opinion that using the term explore in the motion only served to weaken and make impotent what we believe was an honest effort by this committee to address the past lack of consideration of the Whitechapel in the Picton Terminal's application process and settlement negotiations. We request that this committee render a recommendation to council in strong and clear language to direct staff to undertake a heritage impact assessment. So slide 2. A heritage impact assessment should have been ordered by the municipality during the Picton Terminal's application process to amend the official plan. It did not. When the municipality dropped the court case and entered into settlement negotiations, the settlement should have included consideration of the impacts of the Whitechapel, but it did not. Even though the municipality was in possession of our OLT submission as a partner supporting council's decision to decline Picton Terminal's application for amendment to the OP. And I know this because when I was phoning different councilors, they had never seen our submission to the Ontario Land Tribunal. The Whitechapel was allowed to fall through the cracks. We know that an HIA will take a significant amount of time, and as time is of the essence, we believe there are interim actions that can be executed quickly. The Whitechapel Management Board will be having a building condition assessment completed on the chapel by a qualified professional. We ask the committee to request that the municipality engage a geotechnical engineer to undertake a vibration study for the Whitechapel. First, to measure characteristics, frequency, and amplitude of the vibrations impacting the building, and second, to determine whether these vibrations have caused or could cause damage to the chapel structure. Slide 3. Increased activities at Picton Terminal as evidenced in our submissions to you. The chapel has experienced unprecedented damage over the past decade of broken and cracked windows, the degradation of the rubble foundation, and increased incidents of fallen and damaged headstones in its cemetery, as well as economic impacts in our fundraising. We find ourselves in what could be described as a David and Goliath moment, the small against the giant fighting for survival. But in our case, without a lawyer to defend ourselves. But this Heritage Committee is the one tool established under the Ontario Heritage Act that can assist us in protecting this heritage property. Slide 5. The chapel is no stranger to existing alongside of industrial operations. The Conger Grist and Lumber Mills operated on the same land as the Whitechapel. The consequences of those operations were positive. The mills provided lumber to build our community and food to nourish it, as well as establish export shipping, providing economic growth to our community. Activities have evolved through the 19th to 21st centuries on the Whitechapel Road, but the Whitechapel has continued to stand amidst these changes until now. The Whitechapel has experienced the unprecedented increase in damage over the past decade and a loss of revenue, believed to be caused by the increased activities and the expansion of the Picton terminals. Slide 6. The Whitechapel is not just a heritage building. Its very presence tells a story of our cultural growth in not only Prince Edward County, but in Ontario. In the absence of any minister in Prince Edward County, David Conger's son, Stephen, was appointed as a justice of the peace and was sworn into office in 1803, being one of the first in Prince Edward County. In the absence in the county of any minister legally qualified to marry, he solemnized 76 marriages between 1803 and 1823. It was the main preaching place in the Hallowell Circuit, which at times encompassed the entire county. The town of Picton was not in existence when the Whitechapel was built. There were merely a few huts north and west of the tip of the Picton Bay called Hallowell Bridge, and to the east beyond Marsh Creek, another few huts called Picton. Letitia Yeomans, a 19th century woman who bucked the prevailing good old boys network in the cause of temperance, was a substantial figure in the life of the Whitechapel. The Whitechapel is an excellent relic of the past. In design, it represents early North American Methodist Church architecture. It illustrates the religious life of an era now long gone. It reveals the energy, ability, and ingenuity of people who did not have the sophisticated tools of our times, but who made good use of what they had. It shows the strength, the courage, and the endurance of those Methodist pioneers who had an inner faith and demonstrated it in outward achievements. The historic notes on the county's website include the Whitechapel in the rural category. The notes state, to suggest that the county simply holds a collection of heritage assets is to sell it short. What makes the county unique are the webs of life that link these assets to each other through time. Links that bring the heritage of the county to life and make it the fascinating landscape that it is, rather than just an outdoor museum containing a variety of different artifacts. It is this combination of special places and events and their interwoven connections with the life of the county that sets Prince Edward apart as a potential national cultural landscape. I am asking the committee to recommend that council order a heritage impact assessment, a necessary step for the chapel's protection, and to ensure that it will remain part of the county's web of life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deborah. Ben, do we want to do the receiving of the deputation before we start the questions?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, okay. So the deputation by Deborah Marshall regarding the motion referred to the Built and Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee regarding exploring a heritage impact assessment of the Whitechapel, 19 Whitechapel Road, Bloomfield and Hollowell Ward be received. Mover and seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor John. Yes, and Ed, 1 second. All in favor? So we receive the deputation.
Actually, Madam Chair, hold off on the
Yes.
vote until you're done.
Okay. All right. All right. So then have there other questions for Deborah? Yes, John.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the deputation, Deborah, and I'm glad that you included with our agenda the history of this and the indisputable fact that council, through no fault of council's own, but in any event, in all the dealings with Picton Terminals last year, Whitechapel was never mentioned until the very end when it was too late to do anything about it. And indeed, if damage is being caused by the operations at Picton Terminals, something needs to be done. But could I just confirm with you that the first step seems to me to be to prove that the vibrations are likely to be causing either foundation damage or window damage or both, or structural damage. And so that first step is an engineering study, a vibration study, which is not terribly expensive, at least to determine that is the problem. Is that, in your view, is that kind of the first step?
Yes, I believe there are two first steps. One is the building condition assessment, which the management board is undertaking. Okay. But along with that would be the vibration survey, which should occur. Right now you're on half load, so there's not a lot of traffic going by. It's not as much as when the half loads are off. But the blasting certainly can be tracked. So yes, those are the two steps that should be taken. Because honestly, I know that a heritage impact assessment it can be expensive, but it's also a long process. And it is our position that we feel we need to act quickly. So these two interim steps will actually provide the information for the HIA, but they can be done rather quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Deborah? Well, seeing none, thank you very much, Deborah, for your presentation. And we will discuss it going forward, right, Ben? Now the vote?
Yes.
Okay, just gonna have a vote for receiving that deputation. Thank you. All in favor? Yes, thank you. All right, thank you. All right. That motion passed. Okay, so,
Madam Chair, we do have two comments from the audience
okay.
registered. I'm going to let Liz Driver into the meeting.
Hi, Liz.
Can you hear us, Liz?
Oh,
Okay.
yes, I can.
Okay.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Good morning, committee members. My name is Liz Driver, and I'm the president of the Prince Edward County branch of the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario. Our branch mission is to engage with our community to identify practical, thoughtful, and creative ways to conserve the county's rich built and landscape heritage. We present heritage walks and events, and last November, we launched a fundraising campaign to support the digitizing of the Haspy collection at the Wellington Archives. This June, we're contributing programs to the Ontario Heritage Conference, with which the county is hosting. Today, I'm commenting upon the committee's referred motion of December the 11th regarding the Whitechapel to be considered at agenda item 8.2. Firstly, I want to applaud the committee for recommending a heritage impact assessment for the Whitechapel. You will not need to be reminded of the significance of this 214-year-old building. However, I do want to emphasize how susceptible the Whitechapel is to vibration damage caused by Picton Terminal's operations and the urgency of addressing the vibrations given the company's ongoing blasting. Ideally, a heritage impact assessment should have been carried out some time ago, funded by the company. However, if a comprehensive impact assessment cannot be obtained quickly and economically, then there are specific measures that should be discussed. A building condition assessment would establish the chapel's current condition. Measuring the vibration levels generated by the heavy trucks and blasting with a vibration monitor would tell us whether Picton Terminals is producing destructive levels of vibration for historic buildings. How to protect the Whitechapel from Picton Terminals operations is an outstanding matter, and this committee has an important role to play in finding a solution through its recommendations to council. In conclusion, ACO PEC believes it is essential for the municipality to have direct dialogue with the Whitechapel Management Board to identify and act upon measures that will lead to the protection of the Whitechapel. I trust that in your discussion of item 8.2 today, the committee will again bring forward to council practical and thoughtful recommendations. Thank you. I can't hear anything. So
Madam Chair, you're muted.
was I muted?
No,
No.
sorry.
Do we have someone else after, Liz?
There is one more comment, unless you have questions for,
Yes.
if there are questions for Liz, this would be the time. No.
Okay.
Okay.
I think it was quite clear.
All right.
Thank you.
I will let, we have Brian Nicholson. I will let him in.
Okay.
Hey, Brian, can you hear us?
Yes, I can now. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
You
Thank
have
you.
3 minutes.
I beg your pardon?
You have 3 minutes. You have 3
Oh,
minutes.
okay. So thanks. My name is Reverend Brian Nicholson. I'm the minister of the Whitechapel and the minister also at Picton United Church. So this morning, I want to thank you for the opportunity to just share a couple of things with you. and it is about the importance of heritage buildings such as the Whitechapel. You see, I was privileged to grow up in London and about 20 kilometers from the center. So I was bathed in heritage buildings all of my life. And I saw just what they brought, not only to the people that were visiting, but to the whole towns and cities that were there. There was a place that was called Eltham Palace, which was built around 1500, which was about 4 blocks from where I lived. And I used to play in the farmlands there in awe at the beautiful building that it was. And of course, I was in an hour, it was an hour away from places like Westminster Abbey, the Tower of London. And I saw what the heritage and what those places did to the city of London at that time. The Whitechapel is a tad different to Westminster Abbey, of course, but it does mean the same thing. The Whitechapel is part of the fabric and the makeup of Prince Edward County, and especially Picton. So I would ask very sincerely that the Heritage Assessment Committee do a heritage assessment on the Whitechapel so that we can work out what our steps are afterward. Thank you for that. I'm sure I didn't take up 3 minutes, but I cede the rest of the time to somebody else. And thank you very much for hearing my words today. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. I didn't hear that. Sorry.
Madam Chair, you're on mute.
I have a frog in my throat this morning. So thanking you for your presentation. And does anyone have questions for him? Seeing none, thank you very much for your information.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. We don't need any motion to receive those comments.
Yep, actually, we would need a motion that the
Okay.
comments from the audience be received.
All right, so that we have a motion to receive the comments from Liz Driver and Reverend Brian Nicholson for what concerning the preservation of the Whitechapel. Mover and a seconder are John and Valerie, and all in favor. Thank you. Okay. Now, Ben, is this the time we discuss our action, what action we wish to do with the Whitechapel?
No, Madam Chair, that'll come
later
in 8.2. That's right.
Well, keep everything you've heard in your mind so we can get to that when we get to it. Draft property maintenance and occupancy standards bylaw. That the Built-in Heritage Advisory, that is written on my agenda wrong. That's why I keep stalling on it. It's Built and Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee discussion regarding the draft property maintenance and occupancy standards bylaw be received. So this is a very lengthy document, and I have some questions on it. So, and we need a mover and a seconder for us to consider this document. Mover, thank you, Bob. Seconder, Michael Miller. Thank you. All right, so I see Mike Kelly here. He's going to go through it with us. Are you?
That's correct. Yeah, I'll give you an overview of this document. So through you, Madam Chair, we've been working on reviewing the property standards bylaw as a whole. So part of the review, we've looked at, within that draft that you've seen, adding some definitions around heritage. So some of the definitions that have been added that are in there is designated heritage property, designated bylaw, heritage attributes, heritage conservation district, heritage permit and the Ontario Heritage Act. So those are definitions that are proposed to be added to the property standards bylaw. Part 7 has also is being proposed to be added, which is for additional standards for all designated heritage properties, which deals with the maintenance, preservation, and the protection of the heritage attributes. And in there's a section 131 where it references the designated heritage properties shall be maintained or shall obtain a heritage permit from the county. Those heritage permit applications are received by the planning department, reviewed, which then come to this committee. The other portion that we've asked or that we're drafting to put in is the Part 11, which is the enforcement and the penalty section. So in there, we're proposing to add administrative monetary penalties. Not sure if anyone is really familiar with those on the committee here. The way that works is if there's a violation to the bylaw, then our officers have the ability to write an administrative monetary penalty ticket to the business owner, to the contractor. And the way those fines work is they're a tiered system where for first offense, it would be a certain amount of money. If they are not complying after getting the fine, then the officers have the ability to go back and issue a second ticket for an increased fine again. So there's 3 levels to that system. And so that fine structure has not been finalized. We're still working on what those fines would look like. One of the restrictions that the Municipal Act provides for the AMPS fines is that they just cannot be punitive in nature. Another section a part that's in that section is a Part 3 summons to court. That's a costly and time-consuming measure. And also charges can be laid under the Ontario Heritage Act, which again is a timely and costly step. So we envision most of our enforcement will be taking place through the AMPS, through the fine structure. And that pretty much sums up the aspects of the draft property standards bylaw as it relates to the heritage.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Yes, Councillor Hirsch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my apologies, Ben. Now I remember why we're doing this. We finally are going to put some teeth in place. Thanks, Mike, for that explanation. I think the provisions you've talked about are quite good, but let me go into 2 other potential parts of the bylaw. That would be Part 9 and Part 10, which deals with orders to remedy and emergency orders. One of the circumstances we have experienced with heritage buildings over the last few years is that a contractor working on a building is employing techniques which are damaging to the building and would not be allowed by their permit, assuming they even had one. Or maybe they're working without a permit. And in our view, we've said this before, and you're aware of this, of course, that there should be an ability to issue a stop work order, or some kind of a remedy, I guess. Can you speak to what section Part 9 or Part 10 could do in that respect? Because trouble with remedying after the fact is, well, it may be too late, right? And if damage is occurring, it needs to be stopped in its track. So I'll let you speak to that if you would.
Absolutely. Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Hirsch. So the emergency orders portion there, that would be if we look at that as if that's the structure of the property of the building, if that is going to cause an immediate danger or health issue to the public, then that's when the emergency order would kick in. If, for example, if someone is cleaning the brick or painting it and such like that, then in that instance, the emergency order wouldn't apply at that point. Again, but if they're doing work and taking bricks out and that kind of stuff, and we would be working in conjunction, obviously, with the building department for one. And then we would be looking at the emergency order section if it's appropriate in those matters, depending on what the site-specific condition is.
If I might just follow up, Madam Chair. So yeah, that deals with danger to people. It doesn't deal with danger to the building.
That is correct.
Yeah, and that would be our concern. So I don't know, Madam Chair, if I mean, we should have more discussion on this. I'd be prepared to make a motion to have another inclusion in this bylaw. It hasn't gone to council yet, so a comment is still being accepted, obviously. But that would be something that I'm interested in pursuing if the rest of the committee is.
And I suspect that there may be some other things that I looking at the definitions. I'm not sure of your definitions that you inserted for heritage. Maybe there will be feedback on some other things. So since it hasn't gone to council, I think it's a good idea to do that and have a review over it. So that's one item. Yes, Bob, please.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So my question, Mike, is along the same lines as Councillor Hirsch, and I'm looking at the order to remedy section, and specifically at the bottom of the I think it's page 40 on our agenda, that an order to remedy may be issued pursuant to the Building Code Act, and I'm just wondering, would the heritage attributes be protected if the order could only be issued under the Building Code Act?
Through you, Madam Chair, the
Yes.
Order to remedy piece, like this is a wide bylaw. It's not just for heritage. This bylaw, it deals with the minimum maintenance standards on any property in the county, and it also deals with the landlord tenancy, the Residential Tenancy Act, which is for landlord and tenants. So there's a lot in this. So we just have to be careful that when we're doing changes that that we can do that and bring the heritage component into these these specific areas when we get into the order to remedies and getting into the emergency orders. So I'm not sure if I really answered your question.
Bob, do you have an example for him?
Well, let me just reframe what I think I heard.
Yeah.
You can't issue an order to remedy for heritage matters, for heritage attributes, but only for those other things that are currently covered under the Building Code Act.
So through you, Madam Chair, so that's where Part 7 comes into play. We would be able to do an order to remedy under Part 7 of this bylaw, which is the additional standards for the designated properties. That's over and above the remainder of the bylaw for all properties. So we would be issuing an order to remedy under Section 7, which is the maintenance, preserving, and the protection of those. Like there's 4 different points, 4 different sections under that part that we could deal with.
That answers my question. Thanks.
No problem.
Yes. Edwin have a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mike, item 136, which is order to remedy, part 9. At the end of that sentence, it says if there's no compliance, the site can be cleared of all building structures, debris, or refuse and left in a graded and leveled condition. Now, what I think isn't protected at the moment are buildings which are old, historical, what we call vernacular buildings. They're built not by architects, by people using the conventions of architecture of their time. And I'm concerned that those buildings, where's your part 7 captures heritage buildings which are designated and in conservation districts. It doesn't capture those old vernacular buildings which make up the majority of our county, our rural county building stock. I think we need a clause somewhere that says that in the event that an officer is considering demolition, that they are referred back to the heritage designated working group for a quick review to make sure they're not knocking down something which has been covered in vinyl siding, but in fact dates back way back into the 19th century. I think we'd put a date possibly at 1950. Anything that seemed, because it's not an easy judgment for the officer to make, but if anything, say, predated, in their sense, anything post Second World War, 1950s, that they've just referred back to the working group, the designated heritage working group, to have a quick, I mean, we're not talking about coming to this committee, but just having a quick review to make sure that, because there are documents and so on we can refer to and see whether these things are significant and just hidden.
So through you, Madam Chair, to respond to that. So clearing buildings from properties, they require building permits to be submitted for demolition, which would go through the planning review process. And part of the review with the building department would be to determine if the building is a designated structure or not at the time. So that would be reviewed by building and planning prior to approvals being given to demolish a building.
Yes, Edwin?
Madam Chair, may I respond to that? Mike, under current legislation, after beginning of 2027, January 1st, 2027, all listed buildings which have been on the list, on the Heritage Register for more than 2 years, are removed. Now, that register, which has been around for a long time, would capture these buildings and give planning a clue that there was something important there. They're all going to, with a large majority of them, are going to disappear on January the 1st, 2027. And therefore, there will not be that reference for planning to work with. There's no red flag there. I'm really concerned that we don't, that we have some reference back in that situation to the designated heritage working group.
Through you, Madam Chair, may I
Yes.
jump in?
Yes.
So Mr. Rouse, are you suggesting that properties that have been delisted, that this bylaw would be a mechanism for us to regulate them on a heritage basis?
Very well said. Yes, exactly, Emily. Yeah, that's right.
So I mean, I do think that that's beyond the purview of this committee. If a property's been delisted per the provincial regulations, then we don't have the authority under the Ontario Heritage Act to be regulating them based on heritage.
How do we answer that?
I think you're, I think there's jurisdictions of the legislations period. If they're not there under that, then I don't think we do have the authority. Yes, Edwin.
Madam Chair, I'm concerned that we don't get caught up with the Ontario Heritage Act here. It's, I guess, if a building is in this condition where an owner has largely neglected it, and it's just an opportunity. In other words, if the building was then identified as a sort of hidden gem, it's in the power of the county to designate it at that point and actually protect it. In other words, it's a sort of fail-safe backstop mechanism in a situation like this. I don't think it's going to happen often, but I do think that we need some sort of protection, Emily, that is it refers back to the Ontario Heritage Act, although at this point it wouldn't be it wouldn't be jurisdiction unless it was designated.
I think Emily, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair, through you. I do see your motivation, Mr. Rouse, but at the same time, I'm afraid that we're going to be writing something into a bylaw that we don't have the authority to be doing, and that's going to create a discrepancy for us to enforce that. There are processes through which properties can be designated if they do have historical value and they're not yet designated. So I would say that if there's a concern about something on a building, then the municipality would take action to designate. We wouldn't write into a bylaw that we're going to regulate non-designated and non-listed properties.
Yes, thank you, and Emily. John,
Yeah, this does get complicated, and of course, it's a great intention to preserve hidden gems. But from a legal standpoint, if somebody has applied, if the building was listed, but now we're going forward to end of 2027, it's now delisted, not on the list. So it has no status whatsoever under the Ontario Heritage Act. If somebody applies for a demolition permit, Edwin, I think what you're suggesting is that we have a second look at whether we would like to designate. But I don't know what time frame that could happen in, because the person who's applied for the permit probably wants to proceed as quickly as they can, and we would have no legal basis on which to hold up approval of that permit while we try to persuade them to support a designation, or try to persuade council to designate over their heads, which would be a far more complicated and hard thing to do. So I'm not sure how we can accommodate this.
Yes, Edwin.
Thank you. Through you to Councillor Hirsch. I agree with you that in fact, in a case where somebody is intentionally wanting to demolish their building, there's no way that we can go beyond the Ontario Building Code with the 10 days that are allowed for a review of a demolition. So that I agree that doesn't work in that situation.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Edwin.
Just a brief one to Mike. Mike, when is this going to come forward to council? I think it's an excellent document. It's thorough and comprehensive. It's an excellent piece. Do you know when it'll be coming forward to council?
Through you, Madam Chair, there hasn't been a date set yet. This bylaw, we're working in conjunction with a clean yard bylaw as well. So those two components have to come together on a report to go to council. I'm hoping to see something by the end of the second quarter. Like, we want to get this looked after and through council and get the approvals done. But at this point, there is no actual set date yet.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm wondering, maybe Mike, you can answer this, or Emily. If a person is owning a designated property and they come across that they need to have repairs and they don't have money to do this, and where does that put them and us? I mean, we don't offer significant grants for people when they're repairing their buildings. We don't, like other jurisdictions do in the municipalities around Ontario and in North America. There are funds and grants that they can get to help them preserve the history. What position do we put the taxpayer in if owning a house that they can't repair? Do we make them get a loan? I'm being the devil's advocate, because people don't want to get pinned in. They think they own the property and they want to do something with it. So let's just tackle this maybe unwanted thought. Emily, Mike.
Through you, Madam.
Sorry, you go on, Mike.
Okay, through you, Madam Chair. For something like that, that's where like the emergency order would come in, where if it is in a position where the work has to be done, then the municipality would have to issue this emergency order. And if the work isn't completed, then the municipality would have to have the work done. I want to make note in here because I forgot to mention it earlier. Emergency orders have to go through the court system. We have to do the work, bring it into compliance, and then we have to apply to the courts afterwards. So the emergency order is not something that's done lightly. That has to be all the boxes have to be ticked to do that. In this sense, we would work with the building department to determine, is the situation that the person is dealing with that they can't afford to fix, is it in fact meet the criteria of an emergency order under the bylaw?
Okay.
So
Yep.
at the end of the day, the municipality, if they have to put money out to do the work to bring it into compliance, the invoice goes to the property owner. If they can't pay it, they can go and do, we've had in the past where they've made arrangements to have payment plans. There's required criteria around that. Or it goes on taxes. It's a tough one.
Yeah. Emily? Have anything to add?
Nothing to add, thanks.
Yes, Councillor Hirsch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I would just add that we do have the Heritage Grant Program, but I would note that the amounts, the maximum amounts there, 5,000 or 7,000, whatever, have not been changed in many, many years. And given we all know the inflation in the cost of construction and renovation projects, and although it's a separate matter from this bylaw, we should probably consider making a recommendation to council to significantly increase those amounts, which could help with this situation.
No. All right. Any more questions for Emily and Mike? Seeing none, then we can have.
And I do want to make a motion, Madam Chair.
Yes.
If we're finished with the comments, just coming back to the point I made before, I'd like the committee to follow through the chain of how these situations happen with inappropriate work being done to heritage buildings. So if you look at part 7 of this proposed bylaw, part 7 in paragraph 130, 130 little c requires somebody to get a heritage permit in certain circumstances. So we know that. And of course, one of the defects is some people proceed with work having failed to apply for a permit. So that's the one situation. Once they have the permit, then little d says they must comply with the conditions of the permit. And if we do a good job in conjunction with planning to have appropriate terms built into the permits. So if somebody's talking about stripping paint off bricks and these kinds of things, if we can put the conditions in the permit about what techniques must be used, then when it's observed to be happening incorrectly or without benefit of a permit, then I would suggest that there could be a remedy found to require an emergency stop work order, and that remedy could be inserted in part 10. This would all be new text, Mike. I know. I think all we could accomplish today is if the committee agrees that that's something that should be done, perhaps. I don't know, Mike, if you'd want us to try to draft some text, or if you want to just take this on as a recommendation, how we should do that.
Bob, do you have a comment? Right answers?
Through you, Chair, I'm in total agreement with Councillor Hirsch on the goal, but I'm just wondering if there's something that can be done with Section 10 emergency orders so that protection of the heritage attributes falls under that heading in some way. So maybe Mike could consider that as well.
So through you, Madam Chair, just so I have clarity, so what you're wanting us to look into further is being able to utilize the emergency order section for stopping people from doing the work, whether it's painting or sandblasting or whatever the case is.
Where what they're doing is a risk to the heritage attributes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so. Okay, yeah, we can take that into advisement. We'll review that with legal and all that. like I said, the concern that I have is the emergency order section is tied to the court system. That's the problem with the emergency order piece. If you issue emergency order,
Ah,
you have to submit it to the courts. So we're still getting into that. So like I said, we'll take it into advisement
Mhm.
and review it and see what can be done.
okay, okay.
Okay, so just a supplementary
Yes,
question for you, Mike, then.
Yes,
Yeah.
You do have the ability to issue stop work orders in other situations, right?
Oh, under the building code, if they're doing work without a permit, if it meets that criteria.
Under the building code, okay.
Correct. So
So
what I would like,
we'd be trying to put in place something similar to what you can do under the building code to do under the context of failure to obtain a heritage permit or failure to follow the terms of a heritage permit. Same permissions that you have under the building code.
yeah, we'd have to speak to legal on what
Yeah.
what can actually take place in that sense. But yeah, I'll take it under advisement and we would do a review on that and
and get it back to us to see it before it goes to council, just if there's any or other things we see. And in the meantime, John, Councillor Hurst, would you mind taking anybody's member of this committee gets an idea or has a question about this? Can we send it on to you so that there's one central location? I know Ben wants that too. But we need to, if after this meeting and you're reflecting on this bylaw, it needs to come to a central position to where we can get it cleared up and passed on to Emily and Mike.
Yeah, I would think that should go, anything else people have should go to Ben.
Yep.
But again, in terms of providing any direction to or request to staff, it would have to go through the committee again first.
Yeah, yes, but we need to have them make sure we get everybody's issue together.
Right.
So that it's not coming piecemeal and we miss something. It will delay the process if we more organized and get that in a list to them, to our plant Mike and Emily. So if anybody has something, Ben and John, could you maybe review that from your point of view? You'll be because you're the counselor, you'll see it at the end product. So we need to keep you highly
Sure.
informed on this.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay. All right. Is everybody fine then on that? Okay. All right. So Ben, do we have a vote now on receiving the we vote on it?
Yes,
All
Madam
right.
Chair, the motion's
All
on the
right.
floor. So
Everybody all in favor for this? Yep. Okay, good. See. Thank you, Emily and Mike.
no problem.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks,
Thank you.
Sarah, too.
Yeah. Okay, so now the motion, next for 8.2, that the Built and Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee discussion regarding the referred motion exploring a heritage impact assessment of the Whitechapel, 19 Whitechapel Road, Bloomfield, Hallowell Ward be received. And okay, and I need a mover and a seconder. Thank you, Arjan and Edwin. Okay, discussion.
Madam Chair, perhaps I'll just start off by explaining a little bit what happened at council. I think staff's view, which was put to me and put to council, is that we're talking about a privately owned building,
Mm-hmm.
and we're talking about potential damage caused by another private property owner. There being no municipal involvement here. There's nothing the municipality is doing or could stop doing where this situation arises. So to ask the county to undertake what would be an expensive study was I mean, there's no money budgeted in the budget for that, and it wouldn't kind of fit any box. So that was the idea, to send it back and see if we could come up with an alternative solution. And I think there are a number of alternative solutions. I think Edmund has something he'd like to describe. A workaround perhaps to find some funding for at least the engineering, the vibration study, which is not an expensive item. Or another potential is to have the mayor issue some kind of a strongly worded letter to Picton Terminals, except we'd be accusing them of something that hasn't been proven yet, and that's where
Yes.
I think we fall down. So I'll stop there.
Okay, so Edwin has a suggestion?
No, thank
Edwin?
you, Madam Chair. Yes, it arises from the notion that we have to do something quickly. And as Deborah Marshall said, the Board of Management is going to engage somebody to do a specialist to do their own condition assessment. So this motion only relates now to doing, as John Hirsch said, the component which approves or otherwise disproves with that vibration is causing the problem for the church, for the chapel. And so essentially my motion here is that that a geotechnical engineer is engaged to do this measurement and the monitoring. And in order to pay for that, the second component is, and this is where it's a little bit going beyond any precedent, that the cost of the vibration study be funded under a heritage property grant in the structural category, which can be up to a value of $7,000. So that is a very scoped down study that focuses in on exactly what needs to be known in order for us to, for the owner and the county to know where things stand and whether this vibration is causing the problem. It's a long-standing problem, as Deborah Marshall said, more than a decade of this problem, but it needs to be proven so that we are in a position to make judgments. So my amended, or whether it's in fact an amended or a new motion now, because it's not asking for heritage impact assessment anymore, which, as everyone has understood, is an expensive operation. It's just simply a very scoped geotechnical study. How do we proceed from here, Councillor Hirsch? We've got the wording here. It's got a number of whereases which really relate to the background which has been discussed this morning, and just puts it down as a sort of background to the actual motion.
I can't read that.
Hang on.
It's so small.
Oh gosh, yes.
Okay, here we are. It's okay. Ah, damn.
Ben, do you have my text?
Hang on. Isn't this your text on the screen? Can you see?
Well, yes, it's coming up so small. Are people able to read it?
Yeah, no.
I'm having a problem slightly with my whole system this morning, so I'm sort of winging it a bit. I've got a copy of the text, my text on my own screen.
This is an extensive motion with so many.
Madam Chair, the motion's quite short. It's at the end. There are a lot of background whereases, just to give the context. I could read the two, if you like, I could read the two.
No, I need to read it myself.
You want to read the whole thing yourself?
Well, I think it's pretty clear. And the motion summarizes it pretty well.
If I could just add, Madam Chair, to support Edmund's case here, that the county does have obligations in respect of preserving heritage buildings.
Yeah.
Or preventing damage to heritage buildings in this case.
Yeah.
And one could argue, I'm not saying I would personally make this argument, but one could argue
Mhm.
that by allowing an operation to take place on a property via zoning or permits or whatever, if that operation causes damage to a neighboring property, which is a heritage building, then
Mhm.
the county does indeed have potentially some responsibility. Now, the history of Picton Terminal's operation, as everybody knows, is very complicated and fraught with difficulty and still largely up in the air as to what they are or are not allowed to do, and are they not operating within our zoning rules. But that argument could be made that there is some responsibility on the county's part. And I think Edwin's idea that we seek to use some of the heritage grant funds, which have been poorly subscribed in the last couple of years, so there is money available. That could be done. Now, perhaps it
So-
should be the church itself that makes the application. That would be the normal way.
Yes.
But, think-
I think.
Madam Chair,
yes,
Madam
yes.
Chair, may I,
Yes.
in reviewing the Heritage Grant Program on our website, the
Yeah.
county's website, normally it does require the owner of the property
Yeah.
to apply for the grant.
Yeah.
The funds available are matching funds, so that the grant program funds up to 50%.
Yeah.
And the structural stream or category, whereas Mr. Rouse has 7,000, the website reads 5,000, but we can clarify that. This, I mean, it is certainly within the purview of the committee to review grant applications, heritage grant applications, and do that, but it might be more appropriate for the owners of the church itself to make such an application.
Yes.
And proceed.
I don't have any problem with they are making sense when they say they need to know the source of the problem and make sure that is it, so that you're going to have a successful renovation and repair. So having them apply for the heritage grant for $5,000, which is $5,000, from the owner of the property, and get that settled and come back with this clear evidence that these vibrations on this road is disturbing this rubble stone. In logic, it makes sense that the vibrations can disturb rubble stone basements and foundations. So that part, I get that very well, and I'm very clear. I'm very happy that would be done, so they can confirm and then move on to the next step of what they'll have to do in the process of rectifying it and who's responsible for it. That is a given for me to have that step taken, because you need to know the problem and you need to prove the problem if they're going to ever get into a court battle with it. Yes, Edwin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The reason for putting money into the motion in this way was there is a concern about urgency in getting moving on this. And Councillor Hirsch, is this, in your opinion, best kept in and trying it out with the council's reaction, or better to remove it?
Well, I think if you're trying to combine two things here. You're trying to I know you're justifying the heritage background, and they've heard some heritage background. Councilors have heard that in the past, and that's great. But I think it's a two-step. You have a much stronger to say, here, we've already got our evidence. We've done the first step. We got the funding. We did it, and here's what is going on now. How can you support us in this? And that's the evidence that you have that you need help going forward. Yes, John.
So it's an interesting thought, Edwin, that it hadn't occurred to me before, that if the committee concludes today that we should simply ask the United Church or the management board to file the grant application, then that's dealt with completely by this committee, and kind of short circuits the council process, actually. if this committee felt that this was a proper way to spend that grant money. As you said, it is to do with structural.
Mhm.
One could make that argument. Or the way you have this worded now, it goes to council to kind of approve the same thing. So perhaps it would be, I'm just thinking out loud here, maybe it would be better just for this committee to advise the management board to quickly file a grant application.
Yeah.
And that would come to us at our next meeting.
Yeah, and that would be expedited to get that done. Yes, Michael, you've had your hand up a long
Yeah,
time.
I would agree with John. The thing is to avoid going to council. Because it'll get bogged down. It'll take time. I mean, so I think the thing is go
You
the
think?
most expeditious, go the most expeditious route. Secondly, have they or do we know or can we encourage them? There are other places they can apply for heritage grant that is through the county foundation.
Yeah.
They can get a grant from the county foundation.
Yes, and that's a small one, and it's issued in August of some years. So our grant would be the fastest one to get.
Yeah,
if they're
but
thinking to get
the
that
Build
done.
Heritage Fund,
Yeah.
administered by county foundation.
Yeah, that
which
is always done in August because
Yeah.
Glenn would apply for it last August. So I'm
Yeah,
sure.
Well,
And
it might help.
Through you, Madam Chair,
Yes.
may I jump in?
Yep.
So I'm glad that the matter of the owner applying was raised. I think we do need to look at the Heritage Grant bylaw, which prescribes the process, and it does state that the owner must apply for the Heritage Grant.
Yeah.
So under the bylaw, a grant can't be issued at this point because an application has not been made.
Yeah.
Secondly, the bylaw stipulates that a Heritage Grant shall accompany a Heritage Permit. So typically, the grant would be given to allow someone to undertake some kind of work or restoration. So in an instance where a building's been damaged, that's more so where we would see the heritage grant and permit in tandem. Someone would apply to fix it and show that they are restoring the building.
Emily, is there no latitude that we need to see where the source of the problem is? You're not going to say, I'm going to rebuild and blah, 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 if I don't know the problem. So they're trying to identify the problem. And if the problem is the rubble stone foundation is falling apart from the vibrations, but they could also say, if this is done, this is what action we will take.
Through you, Madam Chair, I mean, that's not really the intent, I believe, behind the Heritage Grant program. That being said, perhaps the owner would apply for some structural improvements and to investigate the blast or whatever is happening to confirm that it's not gonna.
It can be written. I've been grant writing for years. We can write it so that it will match that, I'm sure. Because if it is, the rubble stone is disintegrating. It's moving, and that's causing. We know that, but we want to know why. So I think this is be very good. Yes, John. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I hope Deborah Marshall is still watching, because it could be worded in a way that they're seeking a permit to do some work on the foundation, but that the first step in that work is to undertake this vibration assessment to determine if that is the cause of damage. And that's what the grant at this point in time is being required for that purpose. And there might be more work later on to actually be done on the foundation. But it's quite true. You wouldn't want to start restoring the foundation if the cause of its demise simply continues. So I think that could be worked out, and it ends up being up to this committee to approve such an application. And hopefully then once it finally does go to council.
And I think that the owners of the United Church owners can authorize their committee and to work to make this application on their behalf, and that, I think that can go through too. Yes, okay, so now Edwin has been really, got a really
I've been,
hard.
thank you, Madam Chair. Getting a little, it's quite challenging, this whole thing here. I just want to make the comment, just to Emily, that this can't come forward as an application for the work per se. It has to be, as Councillor Hirsch suggested, it's a first step in a repair program. We don't know exactly the actual technical construction detail which we would employ to repair the foundation. We actually need to know this information before we even just formulate or specify the exact repair. So we can't go first for repair. It has to be this way. We'll have to try and word it and make that application rapidly.
Through you, Madam Chair, if I may respond. Yeah, I do appreciate why the geotech needs to proceed the work, but I'm just advising the committee of the requirement in the Heritage Grant bylaw that the permit be done in tandem. And I think that possibly it's because, you know, this type of work is maybe beyond the scope of what the Heritage Grant program was created for. But ultimately, as you know, everyone's identified, it'll be up to council.
So yes, when Emily, it's the Glenwood Chapel's on a rubble stone foundation, and it's disintegrating. And the first thing we did is pay $25,000 to have a geotechnical analysis of the soil it's sitting on, because it's a building that's between 50 and 70 tons weight. So they can remedy a rubble stone foundation, but if it's on different ground, it's going to have a different structure of how to do it. So it's very difficult to say to the building permit people, this is what I'm going to build, until I know what problems I have holding the building up now. Do I need a $300,000 repair for the little foundation, or is it a $20,000 repair? So that's in construction and engineering terms, it's summarized, but that's the critical point. And we need to know first before I can dictate exactly what I will do. But my intent is to do this. I think that's what the heritage, it's the intention. It's of that. It's the spirit of the law rather than the letter of the law that we're trying to look at. Edwin, and
I just want to thank you for that clarification. That's exactly the issue that we have to cope with. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm familiar with this issue.
I know you
are. Okay, so yes, Bob.
Hi, through you, Madam Chair. So this is going to come as more of a comment than a question. And I'm hoping Deborah is still on the line listening, but I'm just wondering, given where the county is with the Picton Terminal settlement now, if the Doorncamps or their tenant shouldn't be looking for some public relations opportunities and might consider a donation to the management board to take care of some of these required studies.
Well, yes, Councillor Hirsch.
Thanks for the wonderful suggestion, Bob. Sadly, the owners of the property have rarely, or should I say, never indicated a willingness to undertake such things in the past. Anyway,
I'm always an optimist.
Well,
I'm always an optimist.
And Bob, that's good. You see, I'd like to take him the proof of the engineering study on that, and then you have a bargaining chip of saying this is what you're doing, because fracturing limestone, the vibrations go 5 kilometers, and so, but if I can bring that in and hardcore, and his lawyers could see it, he might be more receptive. Yes, Michael.
Just as a follow-up, if in fact the proposed ministerial zoning order does go through, part of its requirement is that a development plan be agreed between the county and
Yeah.
Picton Terminals. And that would include like
Yeah.
a site plan and things like, here's what you're allowed to do, here's what you're not allowed to do. And this geotechnical study would feed into
That, yeah.
saying if it has been, demonstrated that the blasting and or the truck traffic or both have serious potential to cause damage or have caused damage, then that would have to become, those blasting operations would have to
Yeah.
become part of the development
Yeah.
plan
Yeah.
and restricted in some way going forward.
Yeah, Michael?
Well, realizing that, I think that's a good idea, but realizing that this may be some time being achieved, is it possible to perhaps ask for, I have to ask John, a one-off amendment or a one-off statement from council amending the grant program in this case? Can we get a special case?
I don't think we
Exemption?
have to do that. I don't think you have to do that. And I
Because
don't
it
think we
sounds
can.
like we're in trouble on this. It sounds like
Oh,
the wording is restrictive, and I realize it's the letter and the spirit, but maybe to overcome that, if we could just get a statement or a one-off exemption for this particular thing.
but it isn't us to give, I don't think, Emily, it's not us that has to give the exemption, is it? We don't have the legal authority to do that. The
No,
council
no us,
doesn't.
but the bylaw.
No,
the-
council doesn't, because it isn't.
Yeah. To get
Council
Michael,
could-
to get that through council would take longer than we have to accomplish this. I think we can work with the management board of the chapel to engineer an application which will pass the committee and get approved.
I think
have a good feeling.
they will respond and give us something back that we can do by the next meeting, which is more than, so have them get the application in to those of you who are working with Deborah on this. And then we'll deal with that. Then that's going to be a quicker resolution to get going. And then Emily can come back and tell us whether we did a good job writing that. Explaining their logic. Yes. Edwin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To conclude this item, this was referred back, the motion was referred back from council to our committee. Can we just hold it now for another month before we respond back to them?
Ben, we get Ben on this, on how we want to proceed with that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the committee, you have several options. The motion could be deferred to a future meeting, or it could be amended here within this meeting to change a course of action. So if it was to encourage the Whitechapel Management Board to apply for a heritage permit, the motion could be amended to read that. If the matter is settled, we do not want to see the same substance of the motion. We don't want to see it coming back for a reconsideration or something. So if the committee is ready to settle this matter, it would be with a decision to decide on a course of action or to defer the motion to a future meeting for further discussion.
Okay. Edwin,
Thank you. My preference would be to defer, simply so we can frame up the application for a heritage permit and funding carefully before we move forward. I still have my concerns about how this is all going to work. I think it'd be wise to defer and allow us to have that time just to get this right. There is an urgency, but as we know, because of half load, we can't be doing much work before a certain amount. Obviously, you could go into I have spoken to geotechnical engineers in order to just understand what the issues we're dealing with here. And they don't want to do a sort of one study for the blasting and a later study for the road vibration. They'd like to do it as one combined thing. They can't do it now anyway because of the lack the half load restrictions. So I think we have the time now to do it correctly and therefore defer. That's my suggestion.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
if I may,
Yeah.
one point to consider, if we meet monthly, this committee meets monthly.
Yeah.
If you were to consider a heritage grant, property grant application, there are, of course, just limited opportunities to do that. So the next meeting is March 5th. After that, it is April 2nd.
Yeah.
So
I think we need to consider it at the March meeting so that they can get it lined up for April. I mean,
Yeah.
if we just work on a wording and their intent and what we'll have to have a new foundation. I think that we need to line them up.
Yeah, in
Yes.
terms of the timeline, if they got their application in and we approved it at our next meeting, council still has to approve that at its following meeting a few weeks later. So the most optimistic scenario would be that it's in place by early April, and maybe that's Edwin when the study could commence.
Councillor Hirsch, I think that is probably realistic. Yeah.
Yeah. Bob?
Sorry, I'm just asking for clarification here to make sure I understand it. So the board is currently doing a building condition assessment. They're going ahead with that. We're talking about a grant application, so a geotechnical study can be done. And there's a heritage impact assessment. Am I correct in understanding the heritage impact assessment is a totally separate thing?
Yes.
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 So if the grant application comes back March 5th, is there anything to stop us from today rewording our resolution so that the heritage impact assessment goes back to council as an urgent item, and they can either move ahead with that or not, but in the meantime, hopefully the grant application takes care of the geotechnical, which seems like a necessary thing to do right away.
Yeah, the issue being, Bob, that council will not approve funding an HIA. So I think that's why deferral is better. To me, one possible scenario is that the study comes back and it really does show that the vibration and blasting, one or the other or both, are potentially causing damage. And then we might reinvigorate this referred motion to go back to council and say, see, there's a real problem here. Something needs to be done about Picton terminals. And one way to accomplish that is to indeed carry out a heritage impact assessment or insist that Picton terminals do so as part of their development plan.
Yeah, because the municipality does not have funds to, this building is privately owned by the United Church of Canada. So they don't have, the municipality isn't obligated to help fund any of this. That's unless it's being caused, if we can see that it's deliberately linked to the traffic on the road from the heavy trucks, then we have a leg to stand on to have our arguments and discussion.
Just out of interest, Madam Chair, can somebody help me understand just in general terms how much money and time is involved in heritage impact assessment, say for this particular situation?
Edwin, do you know, or John, since you've been talking?
Difficult to put an exact number.
A range.
A range. I'll look at the range. Bob, there's we've got a terms of reference for a heritage impact assessment, which is very, very thorough and excellent. If it's fully answered in a report, a condition assessment report, we're probably talking of $10,000 to $15,000.
I've heard other more larger estimates of that.
The problem with many of these heritage impact assessments, Madam Chair, is that massive amounts of historical research is done. It's wonderful, but it's not actually pertinent to the actual problem at hand. We could scope it. We would take the terms of reference and scope them, or suggest to the Board of Management that it be a scoped terms of reference still, and could control it in that way. So that a lot of the background would just be reference to existing documents and so on. Yeah.
Okay. All right, John, did you have any input from council when it came up before? Did they have any, no? Yeah.
Madam Chair, I'm just going to pop in to
Yeah.
that we're approaching 11 o'clock and we've been
Yes.
discussing this for quite some time. So just a friendly nudge.
Yes, well, yes. So what's the decision here? Ben, can you help us out with that again? So do you want to, well,
through you, Madam Chair, it appears to be there were several schools of thought here. One could be the committee is encouraging the Whitechapel board to apply for a heritage property grant. There's another school of thought suggesting that the original motion be deferred for future discussion.
And can we do one or the other? Can we have to do
We
both?
can do both.
This can be both. So those are the two. So, okay, so we'll have a motion on the floor for the encouraging that the Whitechapel United Church of Canada and the Whitechapel Committee apply for our heritage grant from us. If you can get that wording down.
Yeah, I would very simply say the committee encourages the management board of the Whitechapel to apply for a heritage property grant.
Okay.
And
Guys, can I just make one comment here?
Yeah, yeah.
As of August 2024, the United Church of Canada has almost $239 million in its reserve funds.
Yeah.
The most important thing about this is saving this church and make sure that it's around for another 200-300 years or forever. That is the point of all this. That's the most important thing. So, bouncing back and forth on grants here and grants there, if the United Church of Canada deems this property that important, they should maybe reach into those funds and put some money into that. And then we can try to get that money back from Picton Terminals or from whatever grant. But I'm just, more of a comment than anything.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yes, Valerie.
Yeah, I just want to thank Deborah for bringing this forward. It's such a deep historic landscape piece, and she put so much effort into making sure all the information is presented. And we are in the business of, cultural heritage. So finding an equilibrium balance and agreeing with Councillor Hirsch and Michael and all the presenters, yes, we should move forward on this.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Anyone else like to comment on for Sam? I think that this heritage grant that we have and the money we have in it, it's not the big sum, but it signifies to the Deborah and her committee, they do a lot of fundraising. It signifies that we recognize as a community the importance of the building. And it's we're not going to be breaking our bank, but it'll be a support, and it'll also nudge the United Church maybe to do some more too. But I'm not confident that will happen. But so anyway, so can I call the vote on the motion? All in favor?
Oh, hang on. Sorry, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
If this is for
did we have to get the motion on the floor? Yeah.
We have not got the motion.
Okay, all right. So a mover and a seconder.
And this is to encourage an application for the
John Hirsch and Edwin. Okay, all in favor?
Sorry, Madam, just a moment of discussion.
Yes.
Ben, should we also just say that we are deferring the motion to the March 5th meeting as well as part of this?
We can make this a twofer. It can be a deferring motion that the motion regarding a heritage impact assessment of the Whitechapel be deferred until March 5th.
We're having two motions.
And that the management board be encouraged to apply for a heritage property grant. Does that suffice as
Sounds good.
two-part, one motion, two
Two in
parts?
one.
Okay.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Everybody
So
clear
I-
on the motion? I thought I heard somebody's voice there, but no, okay. Okay, and mover and we seconder, agree with that, okay. All right, all in favor? Okay, very good. Okay, now, Ben, what do we do now?
Okay, well, that is passed.
Oh, okay,
So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which I would like to take a moment to speak to. I circulated an email regarding the interviews, sort of focus group thing that the Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism is doing regarding its Heritage Framework Transformation Initiative. The quick call of the provincial election has put that on hold.
Yeah.
Under the caretaking functions, the government is holding off on doing extraneous work. So I was informed yesterday, I suppose, that the interview, which had been scheduled for Friday, will be postponed until after the election. Nevertheless, it's probably something that the committee may want to talk about.
Mhm. Well, I mean, the thing is that they wanted to meet with members of some of the committees, have you included in a big Zoom call where you could all put in your input. And I'm assuming that that's the tactic they'll take next, but we never know, depending on who's being elected. So we should just keep our eyes open for this to come back around to us as an opportunity to give input and hear what they're doing in the future. Yes, Bob.
Madam Chair, so through you to Ben, what I'd be very interested in is if you respond to the ministry and tell them we're still interested, but we would appreciate having some sort of a discussion guide, agenda, some sort of information when the meeting is rescheduled, so we can better decide who to send and how many.
Oh, yeah, they said 2, I think, spots were open. Yeah, for this time, but it'll make yeah, you're right we should ask for that. Because in fact, if it's a new government, it might be all restructured into some other format or dropped for a year or something. Okay, so as that, Ben, is that okay? And we have this motion on the floor, be received and could add a clause that we say that we request that we be have information for when it's coming up in the future, and explain it.
Yeah, I can certainly just take that as direction from the committee and when we reschedule, ask for information.
Okay.
So just the motion to receive
Okay.
would be.
That the Built-in Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee discussion regarding the Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism Heritage Transformative Initiative be received. And I need Councillor
Yeah.
Herscher, and that we will respond requesting for information for the future meetings and discussions.
So a mover and seconder.
Yeah, seconder. Edwin and John and Bob. We'll have Edwin and Bob. Okay. All right, all in favor? Thank you. 8.4. All right, this is you've got the PowerPoint, the draft PowerPoint presentation. This is an annual requirement that we go to council and present the work that we've done throughout the year. And that the PowerPoint I sent you be approved. I will make some tweaks to it, but that's the structural it will go. And so the two motions are that the 2024 Built and Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee annual report to council be approved, and that the report be presented to council by the chair at the February 27th, 2025 Committee of a Whole meeting. So yes, John, yes, mover. Yeah. And seconder are John. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Yes, Rob. Bob.
That's okay. Rob or Bob, I answer to both. It's the street naming task team. I just am curious who the Indigenous consultant is that is reviewing the street name proposals.
Oh, that committee finished its task, I think, a year ago. So it's not a standing committee. It gets pulled together when we need it. And Ben, I think that they have generated a list. The list was approved. And we probably won't need the street tasking team, they think, for a long while because they've generated a big list. But I don't remember the name of who was the consultant on that for the Indigenous.
Through you, Madam Chair, nor do I, but through you to Bob, I couldn't find that out.
Yeah.
But yes, the council put the street naming task team on hiatus. I believe it was last February. Once the reserve list of names was submitted and approved.
Yeah.
So I can follow up with some information for you.
Yeah. So we try to keep it. We are trying to get the work done for a while and then let everybody relax on that item. Yes, okay. Councillor Hirsch.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously, we don't want to get into drafting in mid-session here, but my only comment would be, I think this is quite good. I would just ask you with respect to go light on the cemetery portion. We know that this is your first love.
Oh yeah, I
council, the reaction from council last year was that it was kind of heavy on the cemeteries aspect. So if you just take that under advisement, we should be fine.
But remember, the cemetery and under the law has 50. You have 56 of those cemeteries that you're managing, and that's a really big chunk of your asset assessment.
Indeed, yeah.
Okay, and so we did the vote on this, and so we're on to somebody, Ben, to be appointed to participate in film permit pre-application.
Yes, very briefly through you, Madam Chair, this a follow-up. If you'll recall, Karen Palmer, the county's economic development officer, spoke to this committee at a previous meeting introducing the film policy, and it went through consultation and went through council. And one of the results was recommendation that one of your committee be appointed to participate. So someone from the sort of film permit team will meet with producers when they come in as things are planned for filming, for road closures or whatever else. And should heritage buildings be somehow involved, I suppose the intention was to have a member of this committee be there to provide advice.
Edwin?
Madam Chair, Liz Driver has asked me to put her name forward for this position on the basis that she is a ongoing member of the Heritage Designation Working Group. She has 16 years of experience working with film filming in heritage situations as the director of the Campbell House Museum in Toronto, and she's both interested and very engaged to undertake this if as in that position if it's feasible.
Through you, Madam Chair, the motion that was part of the staff report that was approved by council was a member of the Built and Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee.
So that rules out Liz.
Yes, correct. It should be one of you.
Okay. All right. Yeah, yes, Counselor Hirsch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In that case, I could nominate Edwin Rouse, who is in pretty close contact with Ms. Driver at all times.
Yes. Edwin, are you volunteering for that?
May I just say this? I'm happy to volunteer if it's one that it's only where heritage properties or heritage conservation districts or cultural landscapes are involved in the application for a film permit. I have a lot of things on my plate, and in one way or another. And if it was limited to that scope of work, it'd be fine. If it's attending every single one of them, even virtually, and engaging in that, I would prefer not to. But I will take it on if nobody else will.
Okay. All right. So that we have confirmed it'll be Edwin. All right, so that the Bilton Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee appoints Edwin Rouse to participate in the film permit pre-application meetings.
Right.
Okay, Alan, yes.
Madam Chair, would Edwin feel better if he had an alternate person just in case he wasn't able to meet the obligations?
That's generous. Thanks, Paul.
Ben, do we need to have an alternate, or do they?
Pardon me, through you, Madam Chair. There isn't exactly a mechanism for an alternate, but if Edwin were to find himself unavailable, I mean,
Ben, I can volunteer to help out Edwin. I've had 24 years experience dealing with film companies in Toronto.
Yeah.
Not with Heritage, but dealing with them and know all their tactics. So if you'd like, I could volunteer to help out with that.
All right.
Madam Chair, I would recommend just a single appointment for now, but I will communicate with Karen Palmer in the Economic Development Office, who's overseeing all this, and advise that there are more than one willing participant from the Bilton Cultural Heritage.
Yes. All right. Advise them that Sam is available to with some experience and background. Okay, so that mover and seconder, did I get that on this one?
Not yet. We do need a mover and seconder, please.
I need a John and Sam. Okay, all in favor? All right, good. Thank you. The master list of permits be received. This is for the permits. Do we have new? Where is Emily? Emily, do we have the master list of permits? Any changes?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, still no new permits.
Okay. All right, so that updated master list of permits be received, mover and seconder. Thank you. Yeah, Edwin and Michael. Edwin, do you have a comment? No.
Not on this.
Okay.
I'm going to request something additional to this master list, but do we just approve this first?
Yeah, can we approve it all in favor? There's no new ones there, so that's done. Yes. So then do you have something about that?
Madam Chair, I wanted to request that we have a master list of planning applications added to this. We're going to have quite a few coming along on base 31 and some others, and it would be very helpful just to have a list of a record of those planning applications we make as well, which we make a comment on.
Through the chair, if I may,
yes.
We do note when requests for comments from the planning department are made and when this committee does make submissions, we keep track of that on the committee's work plan. Now, so that is updated periodically as things go along. Okay. If we need to go a little more in depth, we can certainly discuss that. But there is a record.
Okay, there's a record. That was my main point, Madam Chair.
Yeah, there's a record. Yep. Okay. All right. So now we go to the task teams Any updates from the Heritage Designation Working Group?
No,
No? Okay, no update. Heritage Permit Task Team? No.
No.
Cemetery Task Team? No. Okay, so, that the updates of the working groups and task teams be received. Okay, Michael and our John, they are all kind of hibernated for the winter. Yes. Do you have a
I'm just
question?
voting.
No. Okay, go ahead.
I'm just ready to vote, Madam
Okay.
Chair. Yeah.
And the work plan, do we have anything that on the work plan that you want to highlight? Ben or anybody?
Oh.
Yes, Edwin?
Madam Chair, through you, Bob, is this the point where you just make a brief report about our work on the Heritage Conservation District signage?
Yes, I could. And I was going to the same place as you, Edwin, just wondering if it's an item that needs to be on the work plan.
Oh, it will be on the work plan. Yeah, the signage, I think.
Okay.
I think it's on the work plan already. I think, isn't it?
Yeah. Ben?
Yeah,
Your
through
work
you, Madam
plan?
Chair, it is. We do have on the second page, gateway signage to the HCDs.
Yes.
And there's a note from the January meeting that Edwin and Bob have been voluntold in their parlance to investigate this. And I know that Stuart Cade in planning is working on it from the or will be the rep on the staff side.
Oh, great.
Okay, good, that's progress.
So do you want a quick
Okay.
update?
Yes, please.
So Edwin and I have been reaching out to other municipalities to see what sort of signage is in use elsewhere. So far, we've got an example from Halifax Regional Municipality. And it was helpful because it just raised a lot of questions that I think are worth considering when we go forward. Size, content, graphics versus text. And the point that interests me is what will the local communities want to see on these plaques?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a community engagement piece here that we need to factor into the planning. I'm hoping that perhaps there might even be an opportunity through one of the existing, the Cultural Heritage Master Plan work that's going on right now. So I'm just trying to explore whether we could piggyback off that.
Yeah, it's always nice to see one example, and then that is how you trigger, oh, well, I don't like that color, or I don't like that shape, or that gets you feedback, and then you can form what the county or what the people here in the county really want for theirs. Yeah, good. All right. Ben, have we completed anything else on there? I don't have it up on my screen.
I can share my screen.
Oh yeah, county.
You can
sign.
see the
Yep.
planning files as they come in and comments go out.
Yes.
Then we update them. And I try to update this after every committee meeting
Yep.
to mark progress.
Good.
Okay.
So I think yeah. We got lots of projects that are ongoing and still in development.
We've never managed to make this field trip down to the bottom.
Yeah, right. Maybe our last meeting will be a field trip or something.
Yeah. Oh. But what I would suggest through the chair to the rest of the committee is periodically, especially for the new members, review the work plan and consider if there's anything you want to add to the work plan. And then we occasionally take items from the work plan and put them on the agenda when staff consults with the chair and vice chair to plan the agenda. And if there's anything on the work plan currently that you think requires a priority, then, you know, that's a discussion that can come up. When I send out the requests for agenda content, I try to do that about 2 weeks before the meeting. You know, if there's anything you do want to pull from the work plan for a discussion, that would be a time to advise myself and the chair. Anyways, if there's ever any questions, please reach out.
I will. I've got a few questions.
Okay, so I think that if anyone doesn't have any more questions about the work plan, and it's been a long meeting, I thank you for your stamina getting through this, and good discussions though, so that the work plan discussion, the motion on that, did we get that on the floor? Did we vote for that one?
No,
Oh,
no.
okay,
So,
that the Built and Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee discussion on the work plan be received. And that we have a, yes, Edwin, are you asking a question?
No, I'm
You're okay, okay.
supporting it.
I'm supporting your, sorry, Edwin, and how about Valerie on the seconder? Okay, everybody, all in favor?
All in favor.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so the next meeting is March the 5th, and I think we will put on a future meeting, Ben, we must put down to say that we will review the work plan for looking at that, but you said that we'll do that. Make that a note, okay?
Right.
So thank you very much, everybody.
you.
I'm sure we all have stuff to do next, and on this nice sunny day.
Thank you.
No tomorrow.
we just need a mover and a seconder to.
A mover and a seconder. Ooh, oh yeah. All right,
Adjourn.
Michael and Arjan. Okay, thank you. All in favor? Yes, they are. Okay.
Thank you all.